Crawford, this is a guy who was shot in the head and drove himself to the hospital to get stitches. How many times in your life do you get to define your legacy in one moment like that? In the final 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, it was touchdown Giants, touchdown Cowboys, touchdown Giants, touchdown Cowboys, where I declared that the #1 moment in Mario history was Mario Kart 8. Welcome to Behold Pop Culture, the show where we take a look at all the biggest news across culture from this past week and make sure that you're informed on why it's so significant. Why are people having so many conversations about what's taking place? This week, we got a once-in-a-decade event that defined the legacy for two fighters in the boxing world. How often do you get a chance to define the way that you're remembered by an entire generation all in one night? At work, you get at least 5 at-bats a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. With boxing, you'd be lucky if you get 2 in a given year. For Canelo, Alvarez, and Terence Crawford, this was the biggest night of both of their careers. For Crawford, he was undefeated, never lost, but he didn't have enough of the significant wins on his resume for you to say, oh, he's better than Mayweather, he's better than Ali, he's better than Frazier, all of these GOATs on the pedestal. In boxing, oftentimes how good you are is defined by your biggest fight. For Canelo, most people defaulted to him being the GOAT of the generation. For most of his career, the only person who beat him was Floyd Mayweather, when he was at the beginning of his career and Mayweather was at the end. He dominated all up and down his division and was the pride and joy of Mexico. Easily the greatest Mexican boxer of all time. And he had the significant wins, the iconic battles with other people who were trying to be in that GOAT conversation. But Crawford loomed, and many people were asking, why are you ducking the person who may just be better than you? So they gave us what we wanted. Crawford moving up multiple weight classes to take on Canelo in a term that is very rarely used in fighting. We got what is called a super fight, when you get the best two fighters of a generation to match up against each other. This is extremely rare. This is that Mayweather-Pacquiao that people were clearing their calendars to go see. The Ali-Frazier, where people couldn't wait to crown the greatest boxer of all time. Thanks to Netflix securing the rights to it, millions and millions of people were able to watch this go down from the comfort of their homes. Post-Mayweather, the only fights that have demanded attention in this way from the boxing world to breach into pop culture have been the Paul brothers. Jake and Logan Paul, who brought eyes to their boxing mostly on the merit of their social media careers, not because they're the greatest boxers that you can find. So of course, when they announced that this rare super fight was taking place, I made sure I was seated for this event. It took place in Nevada, in the Las Vegas Raiders Stadium, countless celebrities ringside, glitz, glam, top-tier production, and they got straight to it. There were only 4 fights on the card, and after 3 were down, the night was set up for something that we will never forget. I expected Canelo to win because his resume was so decorated, and I saw him dominate so many fighters throughout his career. But it was a true 50-50 fight. So the bell rang, and it was time to find out who is the best boxer of my generation. And that question was answered in a matter of minutes as Crawford lunged in and immediately brought the pressure to Canelo. Crawford, this is a guy who was shot in the head and drove himself to the hospital to get stitches. This is no average Joe. He knew what he came to do: cement his legacy that he worked so hard to build. So while Canelo is this methodical fighter who usually waits and picks his punches, Crawford was giving him punches and bunches all night long. 5-hit combo, 10-hit combo, 3-hit combo, 1 to the body, 1 to the head, 2 to the body, 1 to the head, 2 to the head, 1 to the body, as he danced around Canelo, giving shades of, dare I say, the floating like a butterfly that Muhammad Ali spoke of. And he danced all night. Canelo would land these big punches on him clean, and it looked like it didn't do any damage at all. In front of 70,000 people, he's too big, he's too strong, he's too fast. And I'm watching as Crawford is literally shaking his head, nope, that didn't hurt me, as he's getting hit by Canelo. He's laughing in Canelo's face when Canelo would land 1 and he would return 3. From round 1 to 12, even though he might have lost a couple of rounds, he otherwise outboxed the greatest boxer of my generation up until Saturday night. He took the crown off his head and ended the night with the judges crowning him the winner by decision, and Max Kellerman, the announcer at the event, crowning him the best boxer of his and my generation. Greatness was beholded that night, and my appreciation for a great boxer grew stronger. How many times in your life do you get to define your legacy in one moment like that? For you to get that opportunity, seize it, and become a champion, that is quite literally the fabric that dreams are made of. Whether he never fights another fight again or they decide to rematch, what went down Saturday night was history. Nothing more, nothing less. Which brings us to the sports section of the podcast, where the NFL followed up with even more great games. The New York Giants took on the Dallas Cowboys, one of the biggest rivalries in the sport, in a game where, coming off the Giants getting dominated by the Washington Commanders, most people expected the Cowboys to do more of the same, as the Giants haven't beat the Cowboys in 7 games. That spans multiple years, as the Giants only play the Cowboys twice a year. It's gotten to the point where I just expect the Cowboys to be the Giants' kryptonite. No matter what they do, no matter who they get, they're coming away with a loss. What I did not expect was how this loss would transpire. Because on Sunday, the Giants came prepared to battle. They were exchanging blows with the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants' new quarterback, Russell Wilson, threw for the most yards that he's ever thrown in a game. He topped 400 yards passing. Topping 300 yards would have been impressive. He was letting it fly, throwing it up to his best players, and somehow, some way, the Giants' magic made them come down with the ball. In the final 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, it was touchdown Giants, touchdown Cowboys, touchdown Giants, touchdown Cowboys. With Jerry Jones watching, the Giants were able to take the Cowboys into overtime, tied 37-37, and Giants fans were crossing their fingers, hoping finally you could overcome the big bad bully in Dallas. But it wasn't enough. The defense did their job. They stopped the Cowboys. They gave the Giants a chance to win the game. And in a tragic turn of events, Russell Wilson, having one of the greatest games of his life, throws an interception. He gives the Cowboys an opportunity to win it. And they have arguably the best kicker in the NFL come in and win the game. Another year, another loss for the New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys. We also witnessed the Green Bay Packers on Thursday night cement themselves as a Super Bowl contender as they dominated the Washington Commanders and showed that the addition of Micah Parsons has made their defense one of the best in the league. But the game of the week that everyone was waiting for, highly anticipating and expecting to be fireworks galore, was the rematch of the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Philadelphia Eagles with an opportunity for revenge. Going into this game, I had questions about both teams. For Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes' receivers keep falling like flies. They had Travis Kelce running into receivers and injuring them. Guys who seemed like their careers were over in other teams coming to the Chiefs hoping to get a resurgence. And Travis Kelce himself still struggling to recapture the magic that he once had when he was the best tight end in the league, largely because of him playing with Mahomes in addition to his talent. So will Mahomes have enough support on the offensive side to get out a win? For Philly, some people saw them beat the Cowboys and thought, oh, this is the same old Super Bowl team ready to go to repeat. But for me, I have questions about their passing attack. Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the NFL. They have 2 great receivers, and somehow, some way, it seems like they struggle to get them the ball when it matters the most. Luckily, when you have Jalen Hurts and Saquon, which put together builds one of the best rushing attacks that the league has ever seen, you can get away with that. But when you're in the brightest lights, when you're on the biggest stages, you need to be able to throw the football. It looked inconsistent against Dallas, and just as I anticipated, it looked inconsistent against the Chiefs, as what was supposed to be a high-scoring, highlight-filled affair turned into a defensive masterclass, with both teams having very strong defenses. Philly once again leaned on their rushing attack, their tush-push, and they were able to get the ball down the field to set up opportunities to score. But those drives were far from easy. For Kansas City, again, Mahomes' weapons, are they getting open correctly? Are they running the routes as crisply as they need to? Kelsey unfortunately made a jaw-dropping mistake when Patrick Mahomes threw the ball right into his hands and it bounced off his chest and turned into an interception. That just started the ball rolling down the hill for the Eagles to grind out the clock. And even though Mahomes would connect on one of the now few and far in between big explosive plays, the 50-yard-ish touchdown, it wasn't enough. So Philly came away with the win, and there was no revenge to be found in this game. The Chiefs' dynasty seems to be on its last legs. They started out 0-2 this season, while the Eagles are showing you that they have every intention to repeat as Super Bowl champions. In the music world this week, it was a little bit more quiet, as the biggest promotion going on is Cardi B doing different events around New York to promote her album that's supposed to be arriving this week. So I took that as an opportunity to look back in history to see what iconic albums of recent history were released in the month of September. And it landed me on one from over 10 years ago that had so many butterfly effects that it impacted the Super Bowl that we just saw. And that is the album Nothing Was the Same by Drake. Drake has been a superstar in music for so long that it's easy to forget what it was like when he wasn't, before he became the biggest hit maker in hip-hop history, which takes us all the way back to 2013. As a music fan, there's few better feelings than seeing a guy or girl early and saying, this person makes phenomenal music and I can't wait to see where they go. You have to listen to this person before they blow. Before this album, you still had a chance to get on the boat, because Drake had just won the Grammy for Best Hip Hop Album for his album Take Care. And as much as you might say he won a Grammy, he already was a superstar. At the time, this was extremely polarizing, because Take Care was an album where he was on one song braggadocious, rapping about his aspirations to become the best rapper of all time, and on the next song crooning and sadly singing about just trying to get a phone call from the girl that he's missing. The world of pop culture was asking the question, is this a rapper who sings, or is this a singer who raps sometimes? It was hard to perceive someone as both. Even I didn't know how to perceive him. The whole world of music was seemingly experiencing a turnover. This was the same year that Childish Gambino released Because the Internet. This was an album that was clearly connected to Drake in the style. An album with the crooning, the singing, rapping in a way that was more connected to romantic emotions. Tyler, the Creator, was playing with the same ideas, releasing his album Wolf, before he would really nail it with the big song that took him to another level, See You Again. So while the media questioned if this style would have long-term appeal, Drake took a childhood photo, placed it on the cover, and put his head on the clouds to let the world know, I have arrived and I'm exactly where I thought I would be when I was dreaming of this so many years ago. Because on this album, he reached an entirely different stratosphere in terms of flexing, not just the fact that he's successful, but that he's confident in that sound, that he started from the bottom and now he's here, delivering some of his best rapping of his career on Tuscan Leather and Pound Cake with Jay-Z. One of his best R&B songs from time with Jhené Aiko. He just seemed fed up with anyone questioning his ability, and this album launched him into being right there a superstar alongside his peers that he once looked up to. Every hero needs a villain, and when he claimed on this album that he has reached heights that Dwight Howard hasn't even reached, he wasn't talking to me, he wasn't talking to you, he was talking to his peers to let them know I have the crown right now, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to keep it on my head, because nothing now is the same as it was before I became Drake, the superstar hitmaker. He went on to tour stadiums after this album. It became a cult classic, and even he claims that this is the album that he's most proud of making in his whole career. Little did he know that this album would be the moment where his peers would set their sights on him to say, okay, I respect that you got the crown, but heavy is the head and people are coming for you. When you look at how confidently he claimed he was the best with this album, you could see how he would go on to upset a lot of people. You see how we get a battle with Meek Mill, a battle with Pusha T, and eventually the battle of a decade and probably the battle of my lifetime, Drake versus Kendrick Lamar. So Nothing Was the Same was Drake's true arrival into being one of the best in the game. And it's momentous because it feels like we haven't gotten too many moments like that in recent history. But I think even he would agree to some extent that he's been knocked off his pedestal with what took place over the past 2 years, which is reason enough to heavily anticipate his return. He has a reason to be hungry. He has a reason to dig deep and pull the best art that he could possibly create in response to the biggest blow that he's taken in his career. The question is, how will he respond? In the film world, there's a writer who continues to respond again and again and again, proving that he has one of the best pens in horror, a man by the name of Stephen King. And surprise, surprise, he did do it again. As this weekend, another movie based on his writings came out called The Long Walk. What would you do if someone gave you a bottle of water and a little bit of food packed in a backpack and said, walk for as long as you can, and if you stop walking, you may lose your life? In this movie, there was a Hunger Games-esque theme to what's taking place. Dystopian world where children or young adults have to put themselves at risk for the sake of the society. And Hunger Games that came in the form of each district sending kids to go and battle it out to see the survival of the fittest, and whoever wins gets to make it out alive. In this, you send a bunch of young adults to a starting point, and they have to walk continuously on a road, and the last person left standing gets riches beyond their wildest dreams and a wish of their choosing. At face value, it's a rather simple concept. Where the magic happened is in the interactions that took place on the path to the end of the road. When these young adults are staring down the last days, let alone hours of their life, what will they do? What they chose to highlight in this movie is the friendships they would form. Maybe this is just a little bit easier if we can crack jokes while it's going on. Maybe this is a little bit easier if you tell me about your family back home, who you're hoping to make it back for. Maybe this will be a little bit easier if you tell me what wish you're motivated to get done if you make it through the long walk. And the actors did a phenomenal job. Imagine you're on this walk, fearing for your life, and your foot falls asleep. You'll be limping, jumping around like a dolphin trying to make it to the finish line. They had to maintain a pace of about 3 miles per hour. So imagine what that was like 100 miles into the walk, and all of a sudden you see a hill that you need to pace up. The movie was very intentional to show you after an emotional moment how many miles it's been. 30, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. People in my theater were literally shaking their head, wondering how these kids are persevering. How are their shoes even persevering, let alone the kids themselves? And many didn't persevere. For some, that was just falling over and letting the race end for them. And for others, it was crashing out, trying to run away, just to find out that's not gonna work. You know what you signed up for. Don't expect to come away with some deep reflection on society. It's just a movie that hinges on the personality of a couple of kids, really, that live in a dystopia and are wishing for something more. If that at all sounds like an interesting experience, you have to go check out this movie. Music wasn't the only world that took me to a place where I looked back at legacy. Because this week, in the gaming world, the greatest character of all time, Mario, turned 40 years old. 40 years of us sitting in our living room playing the DS, playing the Wii, Mario Kart, Mario Tennis, Mario Party, the Mario movie. One day we might get the Mario album because he's been everywhere. He's dominated pop culture from the day he put on his plumber suit. Anyone who has had any type of relationship with gaming at some point in their life, they probably have a memory tied to Mario. On my short form content, you can find a countdown for the top 5 moments in Mario history, where I declare that the number 1 moment in Mario history was Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart is the most universal game that people can play. You're not forced to necessarily have to explore all these planets and worlds like a Super Mario Odyssey or Galaxy might demand from you. Mario Kart is a racing game. Most people can understand the basic communication of drive car fast, get to the finish line first. But it's so much more than that. You get to play with all your favorite characters, customize your kart, and drive across these beautiful maps. Even people who rarely play video games can have a ton of fun playing Mario Kart. Just a pure masterpiece. But where Mario has impacted most people is being a fantastic world of escape. One where all you have to do is jump around the Mushroom Kingdom to save a princess. A story that Disney has used a million times over, one that at this point has become deeply woven in the fabric of pop culture storytelling. And they even took it from there into evolving it into these different forms, where in Mario Kart, you don't need to save anyone, you're just winning a race. In tennis, you're just getting some exercise. In Mario Golf, you're just testing your swing. Nintendo shows no sign of stopping the dominance of Mario as a cultural influence, as they took the eyes for the 40th anniversary as a time to announce the sequel to the Super Mario Bros. Movie. A movie, might I add, that was the highest grossing video game movie of all time, topping over $1 billion. And now they're releasing the sequel, Super Mario Galaxy, this upcoming spring. Something that I and many other people around the world will definitely be seated and locked in to watch. Mario at this point might be the most famous person on the planet, considering that kids who don't know anything about celebrities even can recognize his face. So this is just another opportunity to personally look at what are the moments that this character has impacted in your life. For me, I'll never forget the moment that I got Mario Kart DS, where I could be on the train, in the car, in the streets, or at home, driving around, racing, time trialing, popping balloons, playing against my friends if they had a DS. That game will always be a classic in my mind and heart. With that being said, thank you for listening to another episode. I appreciate you taking the time out to tap into all the biggest cultural moments that took place. It was a week where each facet of pop culture had one major event that demanded attention. And as we're in the fall, almost coming up on winter, people are back in school, people are no longer looking at taking those vacations the same way that they were over the summer. This will be the time where the pop culture moments likely see their biggest impact. And I'll be right there alongside you for the ride. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you next week. This is Behold Pop Culture.